Imagine waking up one morning to find the world has gone quiet, not the kind of silence you hear in a forest at dawn or a chapel in prayer, but a dense, suffocating quiet that hums with the absence of thought. It's not peaceful, it's hollow. You step outside, and the streets are alive with movement, people scrolling on glowing screens, nodding to each other in rehearsed exchanges, consuming content at a rate faster than their own comprehension, but something vital is missing. No one is asking, why, anymore. The human mind, once a restless engine of curiosity, has been dulled into passive acceptance. Inquiry is no longer a habit, it is an inconvenience. We live in an age where the noise of the world, notifications, headlines, viral clips, has grown so overwhelming that silence isn't used for reflection, but for scrolling. Our culture is saturated with answers but starved of questions. This isn't a dystopian novel. It's a creeping reality. And the cost of this intellectual decay is staggering. A society without critical thinking is a society that trades freedom for comfort, truth for convenience, and wisdom for the warm embrace of the herd. The dangerous comfort of not thinking. Thinking, real thinking, is exhausting. It demands patience, focus, and a willingness to wrestle with uncertainty. But in today's climate, reflection is treated like a luxury few can afford. Our systems are built for speed, not depth. Algorithms don't encourage contemplation, they reward impulsivity. Schools reward memorization, not exploration. Political discourse rewards emotional outrage, not rational debate. None of this is accidental. As Noam Chomsky warned decades ago, power thrives when the public is trained to manufacture consent. When people consume without questioning, agree without understanding, and react without reflecting, they become not only easy to manage, but easy to deceive. In such a world, the simple act of asking, "Is this actually true?" becomes subversive. It disrupts the dopamine-fueled pace of outrage culture, challenges pre-packaged narratives, and undermines the authority of those who depend on blind allegiance. The information deluge, drowning the mind in noise. Today, the average person processes 5 times more information in a single day than they did a generation ago. Our brains are not designed for this onslaught. Overwhelmed, we take mental shortcuts, defaulting to opinions we've already adopted, relying on the authority of influencers or the comfort of majority opinion. This is social proof, a survival instinct that once helped us navigate danger in small tribes. In the digital age, it makes us susceptible to manipulation. We assume that if a post has millions of likes, it must be right. If everyone in our feed says the same thing, it must be true. This is not reasoning, it's reflex. The slow art of deep reading, once the foundation of intellectual life, is disappearing. Neuroscientist Marianne Wolf has shown how our brains are being rewired by the skimming, swiping, and scanning of the digital era. Without sustained attention, we cannot engage in sustained thought. Without sustained thought, we cannot question. And without questioning, we lose the very capacity to govern ourselves. Carl Sagan's warning echoes louder than ever: we live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology. We are like passengers on a ship whose course we cannot read, trusting that someone else must know where we're going. The emotional battle, why we protect illusions. The biggest threat to critical thinking isn't just ignorance, it's discomfort. To think critically is to admit we might be wrong. It's to endure the sting of cognitive dissonance, when cherished beliefs collide with inconvenient truths. In a culture that worships certainty, this is unbearable. So we retreat. We seek out echo chambers, tribal alliances, and ideological safe spaces, not because they're true, but because they're comfortable. We would rather be certain and wrong than uncertain and free. This is not just laziness. It's a survival strategy. Throughout history, dissent carried a cost: exile, ridicule, even death. Today, the punishment is social isolation, digital shaming, and public cancellation. We have learned that questioning the consensus can cost us belonging. And so we keep silent. But over time, silence becomes complicity, and complicity becomes consent. The systems that shape our minds. The erosion of independent thought is not an accident of history, it is the logical outcome of systems designed for compliance. John Taylor Gatto, the celebrated educator, argued that modern schooling was modeled on the industrial factory. Its aim was not to cultivate thinkers but to produce obedient workers. The bell schedule, the standardized tests, the hierarchy of authority, all were designed to train minds to fit, not to question. From there, the habit follows us into adulthood. Corporations reward those who don't rock the boat. Media rewards those who echo prevailing narratives. Governments reward citizens who follow rules without debate. The more we conform, the safer we feel, until the price of that safety becomes our ability to think at all. The final and most dangerous truth. Beneath all the noise, beneath the politics, the algorithms, the cultural wars, there is one ultimate reason critical thinking is dying: we are afraid of what it might reveal. If we truly thought for ourselves, we might realize our identities are stitched together from borrowed ideas. We might discover that our beliefs are not our own, but the hand-me-down convictions of family, tribe, and media. We might see that much of what we defend is rooted not in truth, but in fear. And that realization is terrifying. To think critically is to strip away illusions, to stand naked before reality without the comforting cloak of ideology. It means accepting that you are not your political party, your religion, or your social circle. You are a mind, a conscious, evolving being capable of outgrowing every belief you hold right now. Critical thinking, then, is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is a spiritual rebellion. It is the act of honoring truth above comfort, growth above certainty, and freedom above belonging. The awakening. When you begin to think for yourself, you start to see the scaffolding of control, the narratives designed to keep you compliant, the outrage designed to keep you distracted, the illusions designed to keep you divided. It can be overwhelming at first. You may feel disoriented, even alienated. But reality, no matter how uncomfortable, is the only ground upon which freedom can be built. As Carl Jung observed, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. The thinker's task is to face it anyway. This is your invitation. Stop being a passive consumer of ideas. Become their interrogator. Trade the comfort of agreement for the discipline of understanding. Let others sleepwalk through their slogans and screens, but not you. The rise of collective stupidity is not a cause, it's a symptom of fear, fatigue, and a world too distracted to look inward. Every moment you choose reflection over reaction, depth over dopamine, you push back against that tide. And here's the secret: once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. The illusions no longer hold. The slogans no longer seduce. And the powers that be can no longer pull your strings. In the end, the most revolutionary act you can perform in a world built on manipulation is not to shout, not to conform, not to obey, but to think. From thought to action, the responsibility of the awake. Awareness is only the first step. Once you see through the illusions, the question becomes, what will you do with what you now know? It is not enough to simply recognize manipulation or to roll your eyes at propaganda. Cynicism without action is just another form of passivity, a comfortable seat in the balcony while the world burns below. True critical thinking demands that we live differently because of what we have discovered. This is where the path narrows. Once you awaken, you no longer get to claim ignorance as an excuse. The choices you make carry a new weight, because you can no longer hide behind, "I didn't know." You see the forces that shape minds. You understand how fear is used to hurt people. And you feel the quiet pull of conformity whispering, "Just go along, it's easier." But you also know that every time you resist that whisper, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Building mental immunity. In a world of weaponized narratives, the mind must be trained like the body, deliberately, consistently, and with discipline. Slow down the reaction, every piece of information demands a pause. Ask, Who is telling me this? Why now? What do they gain if I believe it? Delay judgment until you've earned it. Seek out the discomfort zone, read the book you disagree with. Listen to the thinker you've been told to ignore. Growth lives at the edge of your intellectual comfort. Detach identity from belief. A belief is something you hold, it is not who you are. The moment you fuse them, questioning it becomes a threat to your self-worth. Guard your attention, what you repeatedly consume shapes your mind. Limit the noise. Choose your inputs as carefully as you choose your food. This is not about paranoia, it's about sovereignty. It's about reclaiming the space in your own head from those who would fill it with prepackaged thoughts. The solitary courage of the thinker. Here is the part no one tells you, thinking for yourself is often lonely. You may lose the comfort of unanimous agreement. You may be called difficult, arrogant, or even dangerous. But understand this, every person in history who moved humanity forward was called those things at some point. Galileo stood alone against the church. Rosa Parks sat alone on that bus. Solitude is the tax you pay for intellectual freedom. But it is also the space where your mind grows sharper, your convictions stronger, and your courage unshakable. The ripple effect. The world changes one mind at a time. When you live as a critical thinker, you give silent permission for others to do the same. A single question, asked at the right moment, can break a chain of blind acceptance that has lasted years. You don't have to convert the masses. You just have to plant seeds. A conversation here, a book recommendation there, a moment of calm reasoning in a room full of shouting. These are small acts of rebellion that can spread without you even seeing their impact. The call. The world doesn't need more noise, it is drowning in it. It doesn't need more outrage, outrage is already the default setting of modern discourse. What it needs, what it is starved for, is clarity. Clarity cuts through noise like a blade through fog. It does not shout, it illuminates. It does not demand allegiance, it invites understanding. But clarity cannot be mass-produced, and it cannot be outsourced. It begins in the private, unlit spaces of the mind, the moments when you are alone with your own thoughts and you make a quiet, unshakable decision. I will not surrender my mind. The decision that changes everything. This decision is not loud. You won't post it on social media. You won't declare it in a heated argument. You won't wear it like a badge. It's quieter than that. It happens in the inner chamber of your consciousness, where no audience is watching and no applause can be earned. You look at the world. Its endless feeds, its engineered outrage, its seductive simplicity, and you say, no. I will not be swept away by slogans. I will not anchor my sense of self to the comfort of the herd. I will not trade my judgment for the approval of strangers. This is the first step toward intellectual sovereignty. It's the moment you realize that your mind is not a public square for anyone to decorate with graffiti. It's your territory, sacred ground, and it is your responsibility to protect it. The quiet resistance. There is a misconception that changing the world requires grand gestures, marches, protests, or viral speeches. But the deeper, longer-lasting revolutions begin silently. They start when individuals decide to live by thought, not reaction, by truth, not convenience. Let others memorize the chants and rehearse the talking points. Let them anchor their beliefs to whatever the algorithm serves next. You will be different. You will hold the line. Holding the line does not mean isolation from society, it means engagement on your own terms. It means listening without being hypnotized, questioning without being paralyzed, and standing firm when the currents of conformity try to drag you under. Why holding the line matters? Because when enough people do this, something remarkable happens. The tide turns, not in the dramatic waves of a televised revolution, but in something subtler, slower, and infinitely more durable, the gradual return of a culture where curiosity is celebrated, not punished. Imagine a world where why is not a threat but a starting point. Where disagreement is not met with exile, but with curiosity. Where truth is not dictated by the loudest voices but discovered by the most patient minds. That world will not arrive by accident. It will be built, piece by piece, by those who refuse to be mentally domesticated. By those who are willing to live awake in a culture that rewards sleepwalking. The builders of the new world. If that world does not yet exist, then we, the thinkers, the awake ones, must build it ourselves. But building such a world is not a matter of drafting laws or electing leaders. It is a matter of shaping minds, starting with our own. You cannot demand intellectual honesty from the world if you refuse to demand it from yourself. You cannot insist on clarity in the culture if you tolerate confusion in your own thinking. We build the new world every time we choose reflection over reaction, curiosity over certainty, truth over comfort. We build it when we resist the urge to speak just to be heard, and instead speak only when we have something worth saying. The personal cost. Understand this, choosing this path will cost you something. It will cost you the easy belonging that comes from parroting the group. It will cost you the rush of outrage that fuels so much of modern identity. It will cost you the luxury of never having to doubt yourself. You may find yourself outside the circle, looked at with suspicion, dismissed as contrarian, even resented for not playing along. But there is a deeper belonging waiting on the other side, the belonging to truth, to reality, to the unshakable ground of your own reason. This is not a belonging granted by the tribe, it is a belonging that no tribe can take away. The subtle weapon of example. You don't need to persuade the masses. You don't need to win every debate. The most powerful influence you can have is not in the arguments you deliver, but in the life you live. When you carry yourself with the calm assurance of someone who thinks before reacting, others notice. When you refuse to join in mob thinking, others see the gap between hysteria and sanity. You become a quiet anomaly, a reminder, even if unspoken, that another way of being exists. And here's the irony, your very presence as a grounded thinker will challenge others more than any argument could. They may reject you in public, but your example will live in the private corners of their mind, haunting them when the slogans begin to feel empty. The long game. If you expect immediate results, you will be disappointed. The work of reclaiming a thinking culture is generational. It is like planting trees under whose shade you may never sit. But this is the nature of meaningful work, it outlives you. You may not see the world fully awake in your lifetime. But perhaps your influence will awaken one person, and that person another, and the chain will continue. Quiet revolutions are slow, but they are also difficult to reverse. The great social collapses of history did not happen because too many people were thinking, they happened because too few were. The same is true of the great renaissances, they began when a critical mass of minds decided to think anyway. The final oath. So make the decision now, and make it for life. I will not surrender my mind to the tides of conformity. I will not measure truth by popularity or morality by fashion. I will think, even when it costs me. Because when the day comes, and it always comes, when the noise reaches a pitch so loud that it drowns out reason, the world will look for the few who stayed grounded. And when they do, you will be there, not as a hero, not as a savior, but as something more rare, a free mind in a time of mental slavery. And in that moment, all the quiet decisions you made, the pauses before reacting, the questions before believing, the silences before speaking, will matter. The world may never know your name. But it will feel your absence if you stay silent. And it will feel your presence if you think. The call has been made. The choice is yours. And once you choose, you must never turn back.